Hi, I'm Lauren Cheetah and I'm an author. My latest book is The Winter Dress, and it is the story of Jo Baker, a textiles historian who is drawn back to the island where she was born to unravel the mystery of a miraculously preserved 17th century silk dress brought up by some friends of hers, some Dutch divers. My publisher is Simon & Schuster, Australia. This is not my first book. I have also published The Lace Weaver and Gulliver's Wife and Well-Read Cookies, which is a baking compendium of beautiful biscuits inspired by literary reads. I really enjoy writing historical fiction which is set in Europe. I just find it a really fascinating place, and I love the light there, and I love the history and the culture, and it's particularly the 17th century because I find it a really interesting period to research and write about. The idea for The Winter Dress came when I read an article published in the New Yorker, and it was called The Extraordinary Finds of a Dutch Diving Club. And it is the true story of a gorgeous dress, a silk dress that was brought up by this group of amateur divers. And it was found in a shipwreck off the coast of Texel, which is a little island in North Holland. And when I read about this dress and how it had remarkably survived 400 years in the water, I immediately wanted to know, who had worn the dress and how it had ended up at the bottom of the ocean. But I also wanted to tell the story of the dress's discovery. And so what I ended up doing was fictionalizing that account to protect, the innocent and change the identities around a little bit. But I just think that both stories running together was really interesting, and I tried to thread them together so that, they played off each other, and it was, and the reader would keep them guessing. I am a full-time author. I'm very fortunate in that I get to research and write and do something that I love every day. So the question is, what was or were your favourite children's books ever? This is a really good question. So my favourite children's book is actually a book called The Children of Green Know, and it's by a woman called Lucy Boston. And it's the story of some little ghost children and a little boy called Tolly, and he goes to live with his grandmother. So he's kind of an orphan. He has a father who sort of doesn't pay attention to him. He's been at boarding school, and he goes to live with his grandmother in this haunted castle, and he finds these long-lost ancestors, these little ghost children, and they become his best friends. And it is just a magical, beautiful story. And when I went to England last time, I had planned to go to the house, but unfortunately I was ill that day, so I couldn't get there. And now, of course, I completely regret not going because it is a real castle and you can go and see it. So that is my dream, to one day get back there. So I always wanted to write, I did always write stories when I was a child, but it wasn't until I had my son, which was about 11 years ago, that I wasn't working full-time for the first time in my life, and I had a chance to actually try writing properly, writing every day, being disciplined, and also to have the time to learn the craft. I did a lot of workshops and read a lot of books, and it was the first time that I'd really set myself the goal of writing a novel, and I was very lucky that novel ended up being picked up for publication. My publisher and my agent get to read the first draft because I don't want to subject anyone else to the horrors of my messy mind just throwing things onto the page. But eventually my family get to read the next draft, and so that's always a really nice moment, and they're usually very kind. So that's lovely. I think every part of the process has its good points and bad points. It's work, a novel doesn't just appear. It's an act of labor and an act of love. And you really have to hold on to your self-belief and the belief in that particular novel for quite some time, years. And it's an act of faith to write a novel. But the great thing about it is that I have lots of friends who are also writers, and we all know what to say to each other because we all reach the same point at different times. And so having that those people to support you and reassure you is just a blessing. I think they are the people that get your novel over the finishing line, but also you are the person that has to get your novel over the finishing line. You are the person that has to do the work, deliver the work, and believe in the work. And that's a really important step, I think, because you have to make peace with what the book is, and you can't always predict exactly how it's going to turn out. There's no map for it. It just has to be what it has to be. I haven't had those moments because I usually have a vision in my head for what I want the novel to be, and although it does always end up turning out to be something else, I just follow my instinct, because I think it's a really important part of writing, is that you, especially because I research a lot for my books, there are touchstone books or touchstone events that I know are going to come up in the novel, and I look forward to writing those parts. So that does kind of get you through the more tricky parts, because we're not all good at everything, and I was speaking to a writer friend the other day, and we were both saying that one of the hardest things to learn about being a writer is to know your own weaknesses and to know how to write through those weaknesses, and to, know the parts where you can shine as well, the things that you're really good at. And it's important to know yourself as a writer, and as you write more books, you get to understand your own process a bit more, and your own your own interests and your passion, and you have to keep that passion alive for years and years so that you can finish writing. Ooh, this is a really good question. Do you have to have silence when you write? So my usual process with writing is that I love to start off in a cafe. So I will order a coffee, sit down. I actually love being surrounded by people, but it's almost white noise. So I like to feel connected to the world. And then after about an hour, I'll really get into it. And I would then need to go home and to have silence. And also I like to talk to myself a bit. And so, that can sound a bit nutty. I like to read aloud as I'm writing or reading back over things. And that can freak people out a little bit. So I don't subject anyone else to that. I take myself home to my desk and do the rest of the day's work at my desk. I love reading other books when I'm writing. I find it inspiring to know that even though I'm in the middle of this very messy process that doesn't feel like it's ever going to end, that there is a finished product at the end of the process, that other people who have come before me have finished, they've been through the same thing and they've finished writing, and here is this beautiful piece of art that they have created. So I do love to read while I'm writing, but I try not to read in my genre. I try to read outside my genre, because I just think you don't want to accidentally kind of absorb someone else's voice when you're writing in the same kind of genre, or especially in the same kind of time period, like 17th century. So I usually read a lot of other kinds of fiction when I'm writing. So at the moment, I'm reading a book called Orphan Rock, which is published by Transit Lounge, and it's by Dominic Wilson. And I'll be doing an interview with Kate Evans on the ABC in a couple of weeks, and so that's what I'm reading. It's a historical novel set in Sydney during the 1930s. So I'm reading that for that upcoming interview. But I'm also about to crack open Candy House by Jennifer Egan. So that I'm really looking forward to that as well. So the next book that I'm working on is called The Beauties, and it is based on a series of paintings which hang in Hampton Court. You can go and visit them. And they are paintings of these beautiful women, the most beautiful women at court in the Restoration era. And they were basically the 17th century version of supermodels. They were the king's mistresses. And I'm really interested in how beauty as currency has sort of played out over the years, and the paintings themselves have a voice and they will speak. And so I'm really looking forward to playing with that and exploring that era again, because again, it's a really interesting time period, and there's going to be a lot of art in it, a lot of love and sex, and it will be a lot of fun to write, I think. Thank you very much.